Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Vintage Mike Tales, the place where love, emotion, and unforgettable stories come alive. I'm so glad you're here because today we're diving into a story of heartbreak, hope, and a love that changes everything. Grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of tea, and let yourself feel every moment. The city of Las Vegas glittered, as if nothing in the world could dim its brilliance. Neon lights stretched across the strip, pulsating with life and promise, luring gamblers and dreamers into its endless embrace. But high above the noise, in a penthouse once known for its lavish parties and glittering galas, silence reigned, a silence so thick it choked the air. Nathaniel Cole sat slumped in his leather chair, staring at the skyline that had once been his kingdom. At 37, he had been the undisputed king of the Las Vegas Strip, his casinos monuments of wealth, his name synonymous with power. The media called him the Golden Prince of Vegas, the man who turned dust into gold with a single signature. Investors lined up to be part of his empire. His life, framed by luxury and excess, had seemed invincible. Until the accident. Until the day steel and concrete caved in on him, during a construction inspection gone wrong, leaving his bones fractured, his spinal cord damaged, and his manhood stripped away in ways no one spoke of aloud. It wasn't just his body that had been broken. It was his identity, his pride, his legacy. And then the final blow came. His wife Sylvia, a daughter of an old money family worth billions, left him. She had stood in the hospital room, her lips painted crimson, her eyes cold as diamonds, and said she didn't sign up for this. She couldn't be with a man who couldn't even... She hadn't needed to finish, Nathaniel had understood. Within weeks she filed for divorce, took half his fortune, and with her departure, investors fled like rats from a sinking ship. The headlines followed, from billionaire to bankrupt. The fall of Nathaniel Cole. Vegas's golden boy becomes a lost cause, the man who couldn't keep his empire, or his wife. Now he was a ghost of the man he once was, broad shoulders hunched, short brown hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot from endless nights of whiskey and regret. The penthouse that had once echoed with music and laughter was now a mausoleum of silence. He could not bear it any longer. That evening, as the strip shimmered beneath him, Nathaniel filled his tub with steaming water. He added a bottle of whiskey to numb the ache, his hand trembling as he poured until the amber liquid spilled onto the marble floor. He undressed slowly, staring at the scars running down his chest and waist, scars that told a story of survival he wished had ended sooner. Lowering himself into the water, he closed his eyes. The warmth seeped into his skin, but it did nothing to soothe the cavern of emptiness inside him. His mind echoed with Sylvia's parting words, the mocking headlines, the pitying looks of men who once envied him. "What good am I to anyone?" he muttered, his voice cracking against the tiles. "I lost everything, my empire, my wife, my manhood, what's left?" He slid further under, letting the water cover his mouth, his nose, until silence pressed against his eardrums. He waited for the end, but the end did not come. Arms, soft but strong, yanked him upward. Water splashed over the floor, and a voice, urgent and trembling, cut through his haze. "Mr. Cole." "Nathaniel, no, you can't do this." He coughed, sputtering water and whiskey, his lungs burning. His vision blurred, but he saw her, Camille Johnson, his caregiver. She was only 30, with soft, natural curls framing her face, her dark skin glowing with sweat from the effort of pulling him out of the tub. She wasn't supposed to be there yet. Her shift was meant to start the next morning, but something had made her come early. She had found him just in time. Why, his voice was hoarse, raw. "Why did you stop me? You should have let me drown." "I'm nothing. A crippled man, a failure. What use am I?" Her chest heaved as she glared at him, tears brimming in her eyes. "Because you still have your life, and as long as you have life, there is hope. There's always light at the end of a tunnel, Nathaniel." He stared at her, the words digging into him deeper than any knife. No one had spoken to him like that since the accident, not with fire, not with belief. But the darkness inside him resisted. "Light," he let out a bitter laugh. "The only light I see is the one I'm trying to leave behind. Do you know what it's like to lose everything? To have the world mock you, strip you of your pride, your manhood, your empire? I'm not a man anymore, Camille. I'm nothing." Camille knelt beside him on the wet marble floor, ignoring the water soaking into her clothes. She touched his arm, steady and firm. "You are not nothing. You are alive. That means you can fight, rebuild, start again. I don't care what the papers say or what she did to you. You are more than money, more than power. And if you can't see that now, then I'll remind you every single day until you do." He blinked at her, stunned. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not his wife, not his so-called friends, not even his family. That night when she helped him into bed, he whispered, "Don't leave me, please, not like the others." Camille hesitated. She had been working as his caregiver for only 2 months, meant to come and go from his home each day. But looking into his broken eyes, she knew she couldn't leave him. He wasn't just a patient, he was a man on the edge of disappearing forever. "I'll stay," she said softly. "I'll stay as long as you need me." And she meant it. From that night on, Camille moved into the penthouse. She arranged her things in a spare room, but spent most of her time by Nathaniel's side. She cooked for him, insisted he eat, reminded him to take his medication, and most importantly, spoke to him like he was human, not a ruined relic of his former self. The days were not easy. Nathaniel was often moody, angry, resistant. There were mornings he refused to get out of bed. Afternoons he snapped at her for trying to help. Nights he drank until he passed out. But Camille did not flinch. Each time she picked him up, cleaned him, reminded him of his worth. And slowly, beneath the bruises of despair, a flicker of life began to stir again in Nathaniel Cole. The first morning after Camille moved into the penthouse, Nathaniel awoke to a smell he hadn't known in months, freshly cooked breakfast. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting the same emptiness, the same stillness that had suffocated him since his wife left. But instead, there was the sound of a pan sizzling, the faint hum of a woman's voice drifting through the air. Camille's voice. Nathaniel pushed himself up on his elbows, wincing as the ache in his back flared. He sat there in silence for a moment, staring at the closed door. Something about her presence unsettled him. It wasn't pity, no, she didn't look at him with pity. It was something else, something heavier, almost unbearable. Hope. When Camille entered with a tray, eggs, toast, fruit, and coffee, she smiled at him as if he wasn't a man shattered, but someone worth saving. "Good morning," she said, her curls slightly frizzed from the steam in the kitchen. He scowled. "What's good about it?" She didn't flinch. "You woke up. That's good enough." He hated how her words sank into his chest, breaking through the armor of bitterness he'd built. He hated that she had saved him at all, but he ate the eggs, drank the coffee, and for the first time in weeks, didn't reach for the bottle before noon. Days turned into weeks. Camille created routines where Nathaniel had resisted them before. Morning stretches, light therapy sessions, small walks across the living room with her steadying hand guiding him. She coaxed him into eating regularly, into opening the curtains to let sunlight in, into sitting up when all he wanted was to bury himself beneath the sheets. But the battles were constant. "I'm done," he growled one afternoon, collapsing back onto the sofa after 10 painful steps. His broad shoulders trembled with frustration, sweat dripping down his temple. "This is pointless. My body is ruined, Camille. Stop pretending I'll ever be whole again." Camille knelt in front of him, her hands firm on his knees. Her brown eyes locked onto his with quiet fire. "You are whole, Nathaniel. Maybe not the way you once were. But wholeness isn't only about muscles or what you think makes you a man. You're alive. You're fighting. That is wholeness." He wanted to scream at her, to push her away, but instead his throat tightened, and to his own shame tears burned his eyes. He turned his face from her, but she didn't mock him, didn't retreat. She simply placed her hand over his trembling one. And for the first time, Nathaniel allowed himself to cry in front of another human being. At night they would sometimes talk for hours. The city glittered below as Nathaniel sat in his chair, Camille across from him, legs tucked under her. She shared stories about growing up in the rougher neighborhoods of Las Vegas, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs, but still sang gospel in the evenings to remind them of hope. "My mama always said storms don't last forever," Camille said one night, her voice soft. "And when you survive them, you come out stronger, even if you don't come out the same." Nathaniel stared at her, the weight of her words pressing against his chest. "And what if the storm takes everything from you?" She tilted her head, her curls catching the faint glow of the lamp. Then you build again. Maybe differently, maybe slower. But you build. You don't stop. Her strength humbled him. Here she was, a woman with no wealth, no name in the city, yet she held a power far greater than money, the power to endure. And for the first time, Nathaniel began to believe he could endure too. It was a slow transformation. He began engaging more in his therapy. His bones healed. His strength returned piece by piece. He still asked Camille not to share his progress with anyone. Not the doctors. Not the few business contacts who still occasionally checked in. "They'll use it against me if they know I'm recovering," he said. "Let them think I'm finished." Camille didn't question it. She respected his need for secrecy, though she often reminded him that one day the world would see what she already did, that he wasn't defeated. There were nights when silence fell between them, heavy with emotions neither dared to voice. Nathaniel would find himself watching her as she read on the couch, the curve of her lips when she smiled at something on the page, the way her laughter echoed like warmth against the cold walls. And Camille, though she never admitted it, felt her heart pull toward him in ways she tried to resist. He was her patient, her responsibility. But each time she saw him rise from his chair, take another step, or even smile faintly, she felt pride swell in her chest, pride in something softer, something dangerous. One evening, after a particularly grueling therapy session, Nathaniel sat with her on the balcony, the neon lights painting their faces in shades of pink and gold. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, he didn't see himself as a broken man. He saw himself as a man standing at the edge of something new. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. She frowned. "Doing what? Staying? Putting up with me? Most people would have walked away by now." Camille held his gaze, her voice steady. "Because I see you, Nathaniel. Not the headlines. Not the broken body. You, and you're worth staying for." The words cracked something inside him. He reached for her hand almost without thinking, his broad palm engulfing hers. His touch was hesitant, almost fearful, but Camille didn't pull away. The city roared below them, but on that balcony silence reigned, warm, tender silence. Their eyes lingered, their breaths uneven, until slowly, cautiously, Nathaniel leaned forward. His lips brushed hers, light as a whisper. A kiss not of lust but of gratitude, of trust, of the fragile beginnings of love. Camille's heart pounded, but she let the kiss linger before pulling back gently, her cheeks flushed. "You should rest," she whispered. He nodded, though his chest ached with a new kind of longing. That night, when Nathaniel lay in bed, he realized something had changed. For months he had lived for nothing. Now he wanted to live for someone. The media still mocked him, investors still ignored him, and the world still believed Nathaniel Cole was finished. But within the walls of that penthouse, with Camille by his side, something the world could never measure was happening. The king of Las Vegas was learning how to rise again, not through wealth, not through power, but through love. The world thought Nathaniel Cole was finished. The newspapers still mocked him with cruel headlines. The casinos that once bore his name now belonged to others. Investors no longer returned his calls, and his ex-wife paraded her new lover across magazine covers, reminding everyone that she had escaped the fallen king of Las Vegas. But in the quiet of his penthouse, the man they called a lost cause was no longer the same. With Camille's guidance, Nathaniel's body had grown stronger. His steps, though still stiff and deliberate, carried him farther than anyone. Camille knew the pain hadn't vanished, but it no longer controlled him, and beneath the physical healing, something deeper stirred, an ember of determination that Camille had fanned into flame. He had lost everything, but now he wanted it back. One late evening, Nathaniel sat at the dining table. Financial reports spread before him, the room dim, lit only by the glow of the Las Vegas skyline. Camille walked in quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. "You're still awake," she said softly. He rubbed his temples. "I couldn't sleep. Not tonight. Too much on your mind." He glanced up at her, the shadows accentuating the strength. In her eyes, always, he gestured toward the papers. "I've been studying the market. The Strip is changing. The pandemic nearly killed tourism, but recovery is uneven. There are cracks in some of these companies. Casinos and hotels bleeding money. Properties no one's paying attention to." Camille set the tea down, curious. "And what does that mean for you?" Nathaniel leaned forward, the fire in his voice unmistakable. It means opportunity. They all think I'm done, a ghost. That's my advantage. I can move quietly, through shell companies, private investors who don't care about the gossip. I can build again, piece by piece, without anyone noticing until it's too late. Camille's lips curved in a small smile. There's the man I knew was still in there. He studied her, his chest tightening with something far beyond gratitude. You did this. I wanted to die, Camille. And now all I can think about is living again, fighting again, because of you. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. You had the strength all along. I just reminded you of it. But Nathaniel shook his head. No, you gave me something Sylvia never could. You believed in me when I couldn't even look at myself. You saw me, not the money, not the scandal, not the headlines, just me. The silence between them thickened, charged with unspoken emotions. Nathaniel rose slowly, crossing the room with deliberate steps. His legs trembled slightly, but he didn't falter. When he reached her, he took her hand, pressing it gently to his chest. Camille, he whispered, his voice rough. I don't just need you as my caregiver anymore. I need you as my partner, my equal, my love. Her breath caught, tears springing to her eyes. Nathaniel. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box he had hidden for weeks. With a shaky hand, he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. Will you marry me? Not because I'm healed, not because I'll be rich again, but because you are the reason I want to breathe, to fight, to rise. Say yes, Camille, be my wife. Her tears spilled over as she cupped his face with trembling hands. Yes, Nathaniel. 1,000 times yes. He kissed her then, not the tentative kiss of the balcony weeks before, but a kiss filled with longing, gratitude, and promise. In that moment, all the pain, all the betrayal, all the headlines faded away. There was only them. Their wedding was small by design, attended only by a handful of trusted allies and friends who hadn't abandoned Nathaniel during his downfall. The media, however, caught wind of it, and the world tuned in. The ceremony was held at a private chapel overlooking the desert, with floor-to-ceiling glass framing the endless Nevada sky. Camille wore a flowing white gown that seemed to glow in the sunlight, her curls crowned with delicate pearls. Nathaniel wore a tailored black suit, his broad shoulders filling it with the strength he had fought to regain. As the music swelled, the doors opened. The crowd gasped. Nathaniel was walking, slow, deliberate, but steady, each step echoing like thunder. For months the world had believed him crippled, ruined, and now here he was, walking down the aisle to marry the woman who had saved his life. The cameras flashed. Headlines rewritten in real time. The fallen king walks again. Love restores. Nathaniel Cole. Camille's eyes filled with tears as he reached her. You didn't tell me, she whispered. I wanted the world to see it with you, he said, smiling through his own tears. The first steps of my new life, toward you. The vows were simple but powerful. Nathaniel promised to cherish her not for what she gave him, but for who she was. Camille promised to stand beside him, not just in his triumphs, but in his darkest nights. When the minister declared them husband and wife, Nathaniel kissed her with the passion of a man who had been reborn. The applause thundered through the chapel, but Nathaniel heard only her heartbeat, steady against his chest. The wedding night was not about lust, but intimacy. In Paris, where they traveled for their honeymoon, they walked along the Seine, hand in hand, marveling at the beauty of a city that seemed to mirror their own rebirth. They shared quiet dinners in candlelit bistros, laughed under the Eiffel Tower, and stole kisses on cobblestone streets. Nathaniel confessed his fears, the parts of him that still felt broken. Camille silenced them with her touch, her unwavering gaze. You are not broken, she told him. You are mine, and that is enough. For the first time since his accident, Nathaniel slept without nightmares. But even as he held Camille close, Nathaniel's mind sharpened with resolve. He was not just a man in love. He was a man on the rise. In Paris, he met with discreet investors, men who admired his sharp eye, for opportunity even, if they pretended not to know his name. He signed quiet deals, purchased undervalued properties on the Strip, and set the foundation for a comeback no one would see coming. When they returned to Las Vegas, Nathaniel was no longer the fallen king. He was a storm-gathering strength, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. On a quiet evening back in their penthouse, Nathaniel sat beside Camille, his arm around her as they looked out over the city. The lights of Las Vegas stretched endlessly, dazzling and alive. "Do you see that?" Nathaniel asked. "The lights," she said. He shook his head. "The empire I'm building, it's already out there, waiting for me to claim it again. And this time it won't be for power, or for pride, or for her. It will be for us, for you." Camille leaned her head against his shoulder, her lips curving into a smile. "Then let's build it together." Nathaniel pressed a kiss to her hair, his heart swelling. The world had taken everything from him, but now he had something worth far more than wealth or glory. He had love, and with love he would rise again. Las Vegas had never been quiet, not once in its long, glittering history. But the night Nathaniel Cole returned, walking hand in hand with Camille, the city seemed to hum with anticipation. The strip blazed with neon. Casinos roared with life. Yet underneath it all there was a whisper. The fallen king was back. The newspapers had once called him a lost cause. Investors had laughed at the idea of his return. His ex-wife had strutted through society pages with smug satisfaction. But now Nathaniel was no longer a broken man. He was stronger, wiser, sharper, and at his side stood Camille, the woman who had stitched him back together with patience, love and unshakable faith. The comeback began quietly. Nathaniel moved like a shadow, acquiring small properties no one else wanted, a failing hotel off the Strip, a restaurant franchise in debt, a forgotten piece of land near Fremont Street. Each acquisition was strategic, each move invisible to the vultures who thought he had no fight left in him. But behind every decision was Camille. She became his confidant, his counselor, his voice of balance. When Nathaniel grew too hungry for revenge, she reminded him of purpose when he doubted himself. She reminded him of progress. One evening, as they sat in his office, surrounded by blueprints and financial statements, Nathaniel leaned back and studied her, her curls framing her face, her eyes sharp with focus, her hand steady as she traced numbers across a page. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to run empires with men who had degrees from Harvard and Stanford. Not one of them ever gave me the kind of clarity you do." Camille glanced up, smiling. "That's because they were building for themselves. I'm building for us." His chest tightened with love. He kissed her across the desk, papers scattering around them like confetti. And then, one late afternoon, Camille placed his hand gently against her stomach and whispered, "Nathaniel, I think our family is about to grow." For a long moment he was silent, staring at her, his breath caught. "You're pregnant?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. Nathaniel sank to his knees, his broad shoulders trembling as he pressed his forehead to her belly. "After everything I lost, God still gave me this? Camille, you've given me back my life twice over." He kissed her stomach, his voice breaking. "I will protect you both with everything I am." News of Nathaniel's recovery had already shocked the world when he walked down the aisle on his wedding day. But now, as whispers spread of his growing fortune and Camille's pregnancy, the city buzzed with rumors. Nathaniel Cole was not just back, he was unstoppable. Investors who once abandoned him now begged for meetings. Old rivals grew nervous, and his ex-wife Sylvia seethed as she watched from the sidelines, her family's casino empire quietly drowning in debt. At a gala 6 months later, Nathaniel and Camille arrived together. She wore an emerald gown that hugged her gently rounded belly, her beauty radiant. Nathaniel walked beside her with steady confidence, his hand never leaving hers. The cameras exploded with flashes. "Mr. Cole," a reporter shouted, "the world thought you were finished. How did you come back?" Nathaniel smiled, then looked at Camille. "Because of her," he said simply. It wasn't long before Sylvia came crawling back. One evening she appeared uninvited at Nathaniel's office, her designer heels clicking across the marble floor, her perfume filling the room. She looked at him with a practiced mix of regret and desire. "Nathaniel," she purred, "I made a mistake. I was scared, I was selfish. But look at you, you've risen again. You need a woman who understands this world, you need me." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise from his chair. Camille stood nearby, silent but steady. "You left me when I was broken," Nathaniel said coldly. "You didn't just leave, you mocked me. You took my money, my pride, and fed the world's laughter. And now, when you see I've risen again, you think you can walk back in. No, Sylvia, the man you abandoned is gone, and the man before you belongs to Camille." Sylvia's smile faltered. "You'll regret this, But Nathaniel leaned forward, his eyes like steel. "I already regret ever letting you into my life. Now get out." Within months, Sylvia's family empire collapsed. Nathaniel quietly bought their failing casinos, one by one, until he stood as not just the king of Las Vegas, but the man who had conquered those who once scorned him. Camille's pregnancy was not easy. The stress of Nathaniel's business battles weighed heavily, and she often reminded him to slow down, to breathe. He stayed by her side at every appointment, his broad hand steadying her as she grew heavier. And then, one summer night, the contractions came. Nathaniel rushed her to the hospital, panic and love swirling through him. He held her hand through every wave of pain, whispering, "You gave me life, Camille. Now I'll be here while you bring new life into the world." Hours passed, her cries broke his heart, but he stayed strong, his forehead pressed to hers, their breaths mingling. And then the first cry rang out. A daughter. Moments later, another cry followed. A son. Twins. Nathaniel wept openly as the nurse placed them in Camille's arms. A tiny girl with Camille's curls. A tiny boy with his strong jaw. "They're perfect," Camille whispered, exhausted but glowing. Nathaniel kissed her, then kissed each child, his heart overflowing. "We'll give them everything we never had. A home built on love, not money. A legacy of hope, not pain." Months later, Nathaniel and Camille stood on the balcony of their new penthouse overlooking the Strip. Their twins swaddled and asleep, resting in bassinets beside them. Below, Las Vegas roared with life, but up here everything was still. Nathaniel wrapped his arms around Camille, resting his chin on her curls. "Do you realize what we've done?" he whispered. "I was supposed to die in that bathtub. And now I'm here with you, with them, with everything I thought I'd lost." Camille turned to face him, her eyes shining. "You didn't just come back, Nathaniel. You built something new, something better." He kissed her deeply, tasting the salt of her tears and the sweetness of her love. When he pulled back, he whispered, "I thought my empire was my crown. But it was never the casinos, never the money. My crown is you, Camille. You and our children. You are my queen. You are the light at the end of every tunnel." Camille smiled through her tears, laying her head against his chest. "And you are my king." Together they looked out over Las Vegas, the city of lights, of sin, of endless reinvention, the city that had once broken Nathaniel Cole, but now bore witness to his resurrection. And as the night blazed on, Nathaniel held Camille and their twins close, knowing this time his empire was unshakable, because it was built on love. To all my wonderful listeners, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Your support, your comments, your shares, and the time you spend listening mean more than words can express. Every view, every like, and every kind message reminds me why I tell these stories, because love, hope, and emotion connect us all. This journey wouldn't be possible without you. You are not just viewers, you are family. And this channel exists because of your encouragement. With a heart full of gratitude, Vintage Mike Tales.